Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're interviewing Pete Maldonado and Rashid Ali. With a total investment of only $3,250, friends Pete and Rashid teamed up in 2012 to launch Chomps, the fastest growing natural meat snack brand. Combining a mutual passion for health and fitness and a dream to create the healthiest on-the-go protein snacks that don't compromise on taste, Chomps kicked off direct-to-consumer, selling meat sticks through Facebook ads. Within the first 30 days, Chomps was profitable. The brand took off during the trendy diet era of keto, Whole30, etc., as their great taste and contained zero added sugar, soy, dairy, artificial preservatives or colors, MSG, fillers, binders, or any of that other stuff. Chomps just celebrated its 10-year anniversary and have gained a presence in over 16,000 retailers, developed 9 unique flavor combinations, expanded into Canada, and just this year, accepted an $80 million minority investment from Stride Consumer Partners. And here to tell us all about their journey is Pete and Rashid. Hey, I appreciate you all being here today.
Thanks for having us, Drew.
Excited to be here.
All right. We always like to start with the origin story of how the hell did this company come to be? And it sounds like where we'd likely start with is, how did you two get into business together?
Yeah, well, I'll kind of kick that off. This is Pete. We actually met through a mutual buddy in Chicago. So I was living in Chicago for about 5 years. And we were playing it was a poker night at my buddy's house. Rashid showed up and he and I just kind of got to talking about what I was working on. And at the time I was actually already working on this company, but we were actually, we started out almost like an Omaha Steaks. So we were selling grass-fed beef and we were selling that to like CrossFitters and that type of thing. That was the concept. But I met him very early on. I barely got it off the ground. I had $3,250 invested. And anyway, so he came in and he matched that investment and we decided we were going to partner together. But yeah, that poker night, actually, Rashid ended up making it to the final round with my wife. They are both extremely competitive. She may be a little more competitive.
Yeah, I think she threatened to throw me down the stairs at one point if I knocked her out.
Yeah, it was a nice way to meet. So yeah.
Hey, it's a good plug for why you always accept an invitation to poker night, right? It's like, man, you never know.
Right. But I think like even after that initial conversation with Pete, the next morning I pinged him. I'm like, hey, you ever interested in having help with this, it was called Logic Meat Locker at the time. And we met for lunch that week, and my wife is a former attorney. She downloaded some template partnership agreement and drafted it. And I matched his investment of $3,250. And that's how the initial company was born. Now,
what were you both doing before this? Like what was your background in? Pete, I think I read that you were in the fitness industry already. Is that what sparked this? And then Rashid, what were you doing?
Yeah, I did management strategy consulting.
Okay.
So the firm I was most recently at, I focused on the mid-market private equity space. So I would, help with diligence, specifically on the operations side, or do 100-day plans, turnaround work. It was really around value creation, but it was this unique angle where we would work with private equity and focus on their portfolio companies. So then it was really kind of that EBITDA focus, right? The value of a company is a multiple of the EBITDA. So if you create a dollar value of EBITDA, there's that multiple effect on the exit value. So, learned a lot, loved the people, loved the work. But, consultants just kind of come in when it's bad and they leave before you really see the recommendations come to fruition. So, looking back, I mean, doing what I'm doing now, I could never imagine going back to that side of it. But I learned a lot and really did enjoy the work.
Yeah. I'll stay there just for a second, and I'll come to you, Pete. But Rashid, with that background, what did you see or what did you hear when he was telling you about the young startup he had that interested you to match that offer and get involved?
So none of my client or project work necessarily prepared me for it, but I think it was just intriguing because, I would say all my life I struggled with my weight. I, tried a bunch of different diets, but at the end of the day, I would eat better if it was convenient, right? And that was kind of the value pop that Pete was proposing, is like, hey, we should be eating grass-fed beef. It's better for you because of X, Y, and Z, and this business is going to ship it directly to your front door. Yes, it'll be at a premium, but at that point, right, we're young professionals, we're making some money, so it's like, I think there's something there, and it was just, to me, it was an exciting thing. The other piece of it is I went to Iowa State University. I'm originally from Iowa, but my two brothers, who I'm super competitive with, they both went to private schools. They both have master's degrees. And my dad always used to give me crap saying that I'm the only son without a master's degree. So from my perspective, this was like a living case study too, where I was like, it'll be, because it's not like I had any extra time. My full-time role was quite demanding, but it was almost like a living case study. Hey, can we get this off the ground, and can we, turn it into something? So that was also in the back of my mind too. That was really intriguing.
Yeah. Pete, when he offered to kind of jump in and join you, was that an exciting no-brainer? Was it scary to have someone else join at that point of the venture?
It was a no-brainer. So my background, I had really been bouncing around from business idea to business idea. I'd never had a real, corporate job in my entire life. I've always kind of worked for myself. So even through college, I was a personal trainer. So you're kind of 1099, you're not really a W-2 employee. And then, from there, I actually went into real estate. And so I got into some real estate investing, then real estate brokering. And then I actually had a frozen food startup that I messed around with in my early 20s, and ran that for a few years. I learned a lot from that, but that was a failure. It was a learning experience for me. And then this one, throughout that process and that journey, I really realized things about myself where, like, I need someone that can help me with, especially the finance and ops side of things. Like, I understand, like, the sales and marketing. I love that stuff. Like, I just naturally gravitate in that area. And that was, I needed someone like that to complement. And so that's exactly what, I saw in Rashid. So.
Yeah. There's been so many founders on here that the partnership was the secret sauce, that the complementary skills. I mean, it's hard to have one person be able to do everything, right?
Yeah.
But it's a process. Cause I think if you think of the early days, I mean, we needed like a marriage counselor, because it was, we've said the word competitive a lot, but Pete and I are both very competitive. We want to win. And even if it's your idea, and also sometimes we don't necessarily have tact, right? We're like, we don't have time. It's no bullshit. We just kind of say it how it is. And sometimes, we look at the world a different way. And so it may seem like we're saying the same thing, but we're saying it so differently that the other side doesn't get it. And so I think it took us a long time to really figure out how to work well together. And we had leadership coaches. We had every sort of personality surveys to really understand how we're wired, and it's really helped to open our eyes and see, like, it's because of our kind of view on the world and how we approach problems that kind of has created that unique perspective.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. How do you, and I'll start with you, since you were just mentioning that, Rashid, but how do you understand Pete now and yourself in a way that has helped you that you didn't understand before, getting some of that self-awareness, personality awareness, worldview awareness?
Yeah. So one of the assessments we do is a DISC profile, where it tells each letter, DISC, means a different thing. And Pete, the way he's wired is he's outside of the circle on execute, meaning he needs to just get shit done, and he doesn't need a lot of information. Now, me, on the other hand, I'm more inside, but my comfort is on the C, which is analyze. So I'm going to ask questions, and I need to process information to have a comfort level of going. I shift towards the D, but I need information to be able to make a decision. And so you can see the dynamic where we're like, Pete wants to get something done. He's going to run and do it. I'm sometimes saying, well, let me better understand this before we run and do it. And so sometimes he viewed it as I'm trying to slow things down.
Yeah.
And me thinking like he's just, following blindly and he's not thinking through things properly, but it's really around just where the comfort level is. So now we kind of find that balance where if I'm drilling him with questions, it's not because I'm being a pain in the ass or I don't trust him. He's like, it's just how I process information. And I'll let Pete say the analogy on how he kind of describes a relationship, because I always murder it, but I think it does a good way really summarizing it.
Yeah. So the way I explain it is, if Chomps was a truck barreling down a highway, I'd be the guy with my foot pinned on the gas. That's all I'm doing. Foot on the gas. Rashid's steering the truck, and he actually set the guardrails to make sure that we don't go flying off the highway. And that's it. And the truck's getting bigger and bigger, and it's going faster and faster. And that's the exact way to think about it. So I'm always just thinking about what's next. How can we grow? And again, he's just thinking about, he set the things up in the beginning too, where I couldn't screw it up too, which is really helpful. I never had that in the past, which is why this is like my first real big success in terms of my entrepreneurial journey. So,
yeah. And I imagine using that analogy, before you had that understanding, you would see his guardrails more like a roadblock, like the thing is actually impeding your speed, and he would see you as a gas with no brake,
That's it.
Like, are we ever going to slow down for the turn? Right.
That's it.
But that's the beauty of unlocking some of that self-awareness, because often the people that have the biggest natural friction later end up having the best synergy when they can figure it out, because they balance each other really well.
Yeah. It's funny. My buddy Jason just suggested this book, Rocket Fuel.
Rocket Fuel. Yeah.
You read that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's exactly, I never had like the title, like the visionary versus the integrator and like that type of dynamic, but like he even talks about in the book, it's like the pros and cons of each of your personalities. And it's literally to a T. I was cracking up. And I'm like, dude, you got to read this thing, man. It's like literally describing us. Like, it's just wild. But, we've been doing this for 10 years now and never really had, titles to it, but now we do since I read that book.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. We're huge fans of it. My business partner and I are both certified actually in EOS type of work, because it was so foundational for our company and a lot of the clients that we served and stuff. And a lot of the people on here on this podcast have talked about traction and rocket fuel and EOS and all that stuff a lot. So it's definitely not fit for everybody, but for the right personalities and the right company structures, it can be very helpful. I'm curious, in that first year, was it in the first year that you all made a pivot from what the business was, Rashid, when you joined on, to what it is now, or did that come later?
No, it was within the first 6 months, actually. Yeah. So I think we realized very quickly that shipping frozen, like it's very tough to make money at scale because of the cost just to get the product to the customer. The other thing is, we wanted a business that was well structured for direct to consumer. So on your website and Amazon, and with shipping frozen, you effectively could ship orders Monday to Wednesday, because if you did it any later, then you risk the product arriving on a weekend when the customer's not home. It could thaw, go bad. So there was all these limitations on how do we really scale the business and do so profitably. The manufacturer, co-packer, processor that we were working with at the time, in addition to offering the steaks and like the a pound of ground beef products that we had, he was also it was a multi-pack. So if you think of our original stick, but it was like, say, 6 of them all in one packet. So you open them up, they're just regular sticks. But it was refrigerated. So we had a stick product at the time. And that's where Pete came up with the idea of Chomps, and what if we create it being shelf stable, not requiring refrigeration. And we effectively took a crash course on the USDA, and we learned how to research co-mans and bought every single snack stick on the market to find a manufacturing partner that would work with us, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to think about the minimum order quantity. You have to think about someone, because we don't know how to make snack sticks. So like, help us with the formulation and the process. And, we were able to, thanks to Pete, move pretty quickly, right? He's going to really execute when he gets an idea. And, I would say within 30 to 45 days, we identified a partner in Missouri, landed on a recipe that met our kind of what our customer wants, and we found a manufacturer that would make it for us, and also at smaller scales, right, at 500 to 1,000 pound batches. And one of our facilities today is that one that we found back in the day, and we've kind of grown with them.
Wow.
So a lot of luck in finding the right partner right off the bat, because you hear a lot of horror stories of co-mans and challenges, and we were able to find a good one that grew with us.
Yeah. Pete, when you all were experimenting with this, was it an experiment in meaning like you found the manufacturer, you started doing this, and it was just one product amongst the other you already had? Or did y'all immediately, like, did you test out the idea first or just jump straight into it?
We jumped straight. Well, we were already kind of selling the Chomps as the multi-pack. And so we were getting feedback already. And customer, all of our customers were already saying like, we love this. And by the way, our customers at the time were our friends and our moms and, family and stuff. It was very small. But the other thing that I did, so there's a guy, it's actually, I used to follow Tim Ferriss, and he had a blog, and there's a guy, his name is escaping me right now. I'll think of it in a minute though. But he actually came on and he was talking about starting a business over the weekend and the things you need to do to verify that there's a market for whatever you're looking for, and then free tools you can use. One of the things he talked about was Google Trends. And I was like, okay, I never really used that before. So I started using Google Trends and searching for paleo, searching for CrossFit, grass-fed beef, and all of these search terms, if you looked at it, were just completely just taking off. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is, confirming that, what I'm seeing, at least in the, CrossFit world and the paleo world, is happening on a bigger scale because, obviously they're seeing this search volume. So that was one of the things that we did. And then one of the other things he talks about is test market. So trying to find random people that don't know you just to buy the product, right? And so it was create a little simple website. You could use WordPress at the time. This was kind of pre-Shopify. And then you buy some Facebook ads. And, and at the time they were very cheap too. And so he would actually do this without it was having a product. And in his little scenario, he creates I think they're like some sort of pet toys or something like that. And he just created a fake Facebook ad and could see who would convert. And so he would get people to convert, reach back out to them, say, hey, sorry, I'm testing this out to see if there's a market for it. I may actually launch it. If I do, I'll reach out. But he refunds them and gives them some sort of like a coupon or something as a thank you. But that's how he did his research. It was like the coolest, most scrappy thing to do. And he was able to prove a concept over a weekend. And so I thought that was, I used those exact methods. That's exactly what I did. And so, yeah. So again, initially
everything from the test website to the Facebook ad and everything.
Oh yeah. The only thing I did differently, I launched the website on WordPress, but then very quickly Shopify was gaining steam, and we switched over there, and it was much easier to run a website and actually convert and all that. But yeah, and nothing's changed since. We're still on Shopify, still doing the exact same thing.
Wow. Would you, if you were doing the same thing, like if Chomps had to start today, would you use the same strategy, or has things changed and you'd have to do it differently now?
It's a really good question. I think obviously, I don't think all of the same things because, back then, like social media was very easy to start building a community. There wasn't a ton of people, wasn't a ton of competition, at least. Nowadays, those exact same search terms, everything's through the roof. CPCs are through the roof. Influencer marketing. We were doing influencer marketing before it was called influencer marketing. We might just send out called seeding, so giving some free product, or we pay some nominal fee to have them blast out. Like, let's say you had an email list, we would pay you $1,000 to send out a dedicated email. And just continued building our own following, utilizing other people's communities that they've already built.
I love that. Rashid, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit different because I think, Pete, if you think about it, it was a lot cheaper to do the ads just because of the attribution has materially changed, right? The access that advertisers have to consumer data, we don't have the same amount of information, so it's a lot more expensive to do some of the ads. So like effectively driving to chomps.com, I would probably say like Thrive Market is a great customer, and they're a third-party online retailer where it's like finding more of those third parties that have traffic already on the site to be able to at least try to create brand awareness. But to Pete's point too, we still have to, there's an influencer strategy, there's an email marketing strategy, but like, I think paid search and social was a lot easier 10 years ago. Like it was you could actually generate a return. Now you're kind of, and I'm honestly, we have a team that's experts at this, and like it's comical when Pete and I try to speak to it, but like the high level is like you just don't have the visibility that you used to, so you're going to spend a little bit more per click.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you just have to be more scrappy on how you do it. But we also, like, we did e-commerce right off the bat, and we were kind of like anti-retail at the time because, again, Pete and I both had full-time jobs, so we're trying to create something that could run kind of behind the scenes, but it allowed us to gradually scale the business, figure out what worked, figure out what didn't. Like, first we started by putting the product in boxes and shipping it ourselves to the point we, reached scale where we could find a fulfillment partner to do it. So like little by little, we grew the business where, if we would have just gone, tried to get that big retailer right off the bat, I think we would have skipped some steps, and the mistakes that we made would have been magnified at that scale. So I think the gradual build we did, and I say gradual, but it was still, healthy growth. But we set our targets really high, so we're pretty conservative when we think about it. But it allowed us to scale the business to the point where it is today.
Yeah. Pete, was there an early inflection point where it went from this level of growth that, like, yeah, that's however you'd categorize it, like it was in the small early beginnings and then an inflection point where you're like, wow, we have hit a new level of scale, or, introduction to the market type thing that you can remember?
Yeah. So I think when we were still strictly on e-com, we had a couple of those moments where it was, one of the partnerships we had was with the Whole30. So we still have a Whole30 approved product. That's one of the most amazing communities they could ever be a part of, by the way. Like we're still to this day really good friends with Melissa, the founder. But that I think I loved working with that community in particular because they were doing the hard part of educating their following about why products like ours were really important to them. All we had to do was show up and provide the product, right? That checked all the boxes for them. So that was huge for us. Just being a little company, we didn't have a ton of content already available, and it was just kind of like we just sold a good product that tasted great, and then it really just took off like wildfire within there. That was cool to see that we could grow within that community, but that's still a very niche diet tribe, right? Like you're still, we're still not talking mass market. Then Rashid actually ended up making friends with somebody at, if you ever heard of uncrate.com.
Mm-mm. So
Uncrate's almost like, Rashid explains it as like a Maxim magazine, but for curated products. So if you're let's say you're a young professional guy, you've got some disposable income, this is a perfect website for you because every day it'll show up and it might have like a new type of alcohol that you want to try, or it might have new watches, it might have cars or dirt bikes or whatever it is, like just cool stuff that people that have some money that want to spend would like. And so he sent it over to him, and the way they work, it's not a paid thing. You're just sending the product, and if the editors like it, they feature you. So the story was basically Rashid was were you in Bali? Is that where it was?
Yeah. On my honeymoon, yeah.
He was in Bali on his honeymoon. And this is November. This is right before Thanksgiving of 2013, right? That timing, or is that right? Yeah. Because the reason why I know that is because I'm trying to make it down to Naples from Chicago. I'm driving a U-Haul truck. We were moving back to Naples, my wife and I. She's driving a car and I'm driving a big old U-Haul. And my phone is going crazy. So by the way, like Shopify, I don't know if you know, it has got that chime every time you have a sale, and the thing's going cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And I'm like, what is going on? I thought maybe I did something wrong and I broke the website. So I'm like, yeah, definitely broken. I'll just figure it out when I stop somewhere. So that night we ended up stopping somewhere around Atlanta, which is like the halfway point. And I open it up and I'm looking at it. And actually the cool thing about Shopify too, it actually would tell you where the source click-through came from. So I'm like, okay, wait, what is this uncrate.com I keep seeing? So I went to uncrate.com. We're on the front page, like the first item on there. And all of those sales were legit. But the coolest thing about this is like, this is just random dudes all over the country that have no affiliation with Whole30, no affiliation with CrossFit or any of these niche diet tribes that we were currently serving. This is just random people that wanted to eat a good, healthy product. And that to me, like, that's when it clicked, where I was like, we are onto something huge. Like, this is going to get big, big. And that was it right there.
There was no promo code either. It was just a description of what the product is and why it's amazing. And so I think I was like at the pool, because I was in Bali, my phone didn't work. So I would just keep in the hotel room, and I'd use it when I looked on the Wi-Fi. And I had like 1,500 orders on Shopify. And typically we were getting like 5 to 10 orders a week. And so for us to get that many, like, I call Pete, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, he's like, uncrate. And so, yeah, they didn't even tell us. And I mean, the editors liked the product, and it look at in the grand scheme of things now, when we think about revenue, like, you know, it was 50 to 75,000 in sales, which was amazing at the time. But it really was a point of validation that, oh wait, we've now moved outside of those niche tribes to kind of that mainstream consumer. And it was the first order, right? So the question is really around, are they going to order again? How do we manage that process? And that then just, the wheels started churning on, how do we actually fill these orders? Because we didn't have the inventory to support it. And so that's just leaning on your partner or making sure we can get them out.
We were still filling those orders by hand at the time. So Rashid and we actually were doing this in my second bedroom of my apartment that I had in Chicago. So when we had to actually do a production run, because we sold out within the first hour of being on that website. Like, we had no product to even fulfill these things. So I'm over here reaching out to every single customer, and I'm like, hey, listen, we sold out really quickly. We're making the product as fast as we can. We'll get it to you. But it took us about 3 weeks to actually get those orders out and fulfilled. And I just called and explained it to every single person, and they were all really cool about it. We had a couple people that just wanted a refund, but most people were like, no, I'll just wait for it. And that was it. And again, Rashid pointed out, like, the repeat rate after that they kept coming back. So that for us was a further confirmation that we were on the right path.
Were you all already full-time into Chomps and out of your other careers, or not yet?
No, not yet.
How long after that moment were you able to make this a full-time thing?
So it was another couple of years, actually, of just building the business. And so doing those exact same things. And once we realized, we don't have to just talk to these diet tribes. We can actually go much further. So then we just kept using those same exact methods. So influencers and all of that, borrowing email lists, kept building it. But then it was our launch into Trader Joe's. That was a game changer for us, because overnight, you're just immediately in the mouths of millions of new customers. And then so from there, it's really just been taking off, really shifted our business model as well, because we were so stuck on not going retail. But then it was like, this is Trader Joe's. That was my favorite store to shop at. I love Trader. I was just there yesterday, actually. But yeah, they're our first big customer.
Did they reach out to you?
Yeah, they did. So they were looking for Whole30 approved items. So that was
wow.
Yeah. And apparently, we had someone in the family, one of the people that work at Trader Joe's, someone in her family was doing Whole30 or buying Chomps from the website, and started passing around to the people in the family. And then she kept hearing the feedback, and then wanted to try it out. So I guess their big question was like, can you handle the volume? And of course, the answer is yes. I'm a sales guy, right? So Rashid would have given a different answer, but we figured it out. Yeah, we launched in August of 2016 with a single item, and it's been a great relationship. We have 3 items there now, and still sell very well. Every year the business grows and grows fast. So it's
wow.
It's a great store. I mean, Trader Joe's is amazing.
Rashid, what kind of magic did you have to pull off to be able to fulfill that level of demand and growth that I'm sure that introduced to your world?
Well, I even to this day remember vividly. I'm sitting at one of my, I can't remember what condo it was, but my family was in town and we were playing spades. And at the time, Trader Joe's would they fax POs, but then we get an email, like a text notification and then an email of the imaged fax. So I got like 1 and then 2 and then 3, 4. I think there were 7 because it represents one for each of their distribution centers. And like I'm looking at them, the aggregate, I'm doing the math in my head. And I call Pete. I'm like, Pete, this is way more than what we talked about. I'm like, this is a lot. Like it was almost like 2 or 3 times what we were expecting. And he's like super excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm excited, but like I'm in execution mode. So I'm like, give me a second. So I go in the other room. I build an Excel model to figure out like how much protein do we need, how much packaging, how much like what does it even look like? I was trying to get the number. Like, what are we going to need to even create this? So got back on the phone and we needed I think, I don't know, it was like $1 million, something like that.
1.1.
And yeah, 1.1. And so I was like, we need 1.1 million to be able to do this. So then that weekend we leaned on friends and family, and we're very grateful and fortunate. I know there's a lot of folks that maybe wouldn't have been able to do that, but over a weekend we were able to raise enough debt only. So we didn't have to give up equity.
Wow.
Personal guarantees, even from our family to loan us the money. And it allowed us to, and on top of that, we had to convince our manufacturer to be able to allow us to scale. Cause at that point, that was like all of their capacity for 4 to 6 weeks, at a significant ramp in what they were normally used to, but just kind of asking the same question a bunch of different ways. And eventually you got them to say yes. And then leaning on all your partners. I mean, it was a kind of a big process to even get it done. I mean, the way I always compare it, like when we were asking to borrow money, they're like, how certain is it? It's like we have the purchase order, but it's a food product, right? We've all cooked steaks and we've all burned a steak before. And it's, it's not a perfect process, but we have the right controls in place, and we're confident in our team and we can execute. So we were able to execute. I think everyone got paid off within, I don't know, it was like 4 months, I think.
Yeah, because we were offering a 10% simple interest rate, and it ended up being more of like a 35 or 40% return for them in a very short period of time. Or if you annualize it, it would be like a 35, 40% return for them. So like, that's awesome. I'll do that again. So we did it. And it was actually funny because so that first order was supposed to last, I think it may have been like 5 months or something like that. And then within the first week, when they saw the velocities, they were like, we're going to run out of inventory very quickly. We need to they put another order in just within the first couple of days that it was on shelves, because they realized that this was going to blow through in more like 5 weeks versus 5 months. So we ended up, just going doing everything we possibly could to go as fast as we can and fulfill a second round. So went back to those same exact investors. So we're handing them the check back and being like, hey, by the way, we have another PO. And they're like, I want in. So they were like, second round was a little easier to raise money for.
Sure. Did y'all ever have to go beyond just the friends and family round and raise some serious capital, or how's that gone?
No. So, I mean, we always had a profitable business. That was like a short-term thing to get us over the hump. But then even then we were really self-sustaining. We had early on taken on we allowed some advisors, I guess you could say, to buy in, but it wasn't for this, we didn't need money. It was more of like, give us money so you have some skin in the game here and you could pay attention.
Sure.
But then, we hadn't raised any real institutional money up until December 31st of last year, where we brought on a private equity partner called Stride Consumer Partners. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they are awesome, great partners for us. And we're excited to be able to get to the next stage of growth with them because they've been there and done it. Back in the early days when it's trial and error and you're kind of learning on the go. That's okay. You could do that when you're small, but now we're at significant scale. The opportunity's never been greater, but the risks have never been greater. We have something to lose, right? And so it's nice to be able to learn from somebody else's scar tissue. That's kind of the way that we're looking at it.
Yeah, Rashid, what in your mind signaled it was time to kind of change the strategy and bring in private equity?
Yeah, I would say COVID put a lot of things into perspective. I think the challenges on supply chain, the overnight impact of foot traffic and retail partners, like you flip a switch and all of a sudden you can't get a key ingredient in. Like it was like, wow. I mean, we thought we were bulletproof like before COVID happened, because we were great growth, like amazing customers, amazing retail partners, like things were just going all in our favor. And then overnight we're like, oh wow, what just happened? And the team was growing, and like we were able to weather the storm. Like our customers are fantastic, the retail partners, we all work together to get through it, and we're way better off now than we were before. So it actually made us stronger. But it was scary, not only for the company, but personally. Pete and I both have families and kids, and at that point, like we were all in, and this was all we had. So I think for me, it was like, okay, we've done so much amazing work, and we've built something really special. Do we kind of test the market to see how folks would potentially value this thing? And the other piece was, we just wanted to get information, right? We're building it in a certain way, but why not we talk to the experts and see what, right? Because everybody thinks their baby's the cutest thing ever, right? And so we wanted somebody to call our baby ugly and understand, like, maybe are there things that we're building in a certain way that we have blind spots to. So we ran a pretty broad process, not knowing exactly what we wanted. And as we talked to more folks, and we got a lot of good feedback, and we got some constructive feedback as well, which was we took with open arms. But when we met with kind of Stride, there was something special. We were their first big food investment when they went on their own. They used to be part of a family office, and they broke off, and it was like it was this young, hungry energy, but also just wicked smart guys. Like, these guys like look at the world in a different way, and it's a vantage point that Pete and I don't have. So it was like, wow, we'd love to have these guys in our corner. And it was I don't wish running a process on anybody, especially at the end of the year when you're trying to build a company and have a family. Like, it was really tough, because it's a lot of work to do it the right way. But I'm glad we were able to get through it and be successful, because a lot of times people go out to market and they don't transact. So we're very fortunate to be able to do that and align with such a fantastic partner.
Oh man, that's awesome. What do you imagine being the biggest, I don't know if it's change, but like strategy at this point, right? Like, I just imagine the game changes, and correct me if I'm wrong, the game changes at certain levels of scale. That what got us from here to there was one thing, but what's going to get us from where we are to where we want to be might be something different. What are you intuiting or hearing or thinking that might be the case?
Yeah, so I'll answer that one. That's one of the things that we always thought we were going to do even before Stride. We envisioned Chomps being a snacking brand. So we happened to start with meat sticks, right? But we see Chomps as a much bigger, I hate to use the term, but a snacking platform. And what we want to be able to focus on is making best for you snacks, right? It's not better for you, we're best for you. And so that's the way we think about it. So when we at part of this process, one of the things that we did was a white space analysis. We were able to find that with the meat sticks business alone, we could build this north of half a billion. So we think we get somewhere around the $600 million mark. So in the near term, that's what we're focusing on doing, is building that part of the business and focusing on the core. In the midterm, I feel like one of the things that we want to be able to do is do some innovating within the meat snacking category. So maybe focusing on formats that haven't been done yet or haven't been done well. And so that would allow us to continue building the brand. In the longer term, part of the strategy would be innovating out of category. So it's best for you snacking, but outside of the meat snacks category. And that's how we get to $1 billion company, in which we have aspirations to get there one day.
Yeah, and Drew, I think we've been fortunate to win in e-commerce and in the natural channel. But those customers in e-com, it's easy because you have more real estate to show why, right? You're great, right? On the retail setting, the real estate's limited. So in the natural channel, the typical consumer already gets the value proposition. And so they see the product, they get it, they gravitate. So as we start getting into conventional retailers, as we start getting into convenience, into mass, into these other channels where the customer may need a little bit more education to be able to gravitate towards your product, it's a different tactic. And that's where, we are in a lot of those channels. We're doing well, but, we continue to challenge the team to say, like, we want to be the number one across all the retailers. And we don't want to just win in meat, snacks, and jerky. We want to win in snacking.
Yeah.
Right. Because, our consumer, they're grabbing a Chomps, but they could also be grabbing that protein bar or that trail mix or that bag of chips. Right. And so like, why should they buy a Chomp? So it's like, it starts getting into more like category management strategy and all these other things around. Before we were really playing in kind of that jerky space, but kind of challenging the team to think differently, because when we look at the data, Chomps is unique in that it brings new consumers to the jerky set, right? So people are buying Chomps not because it's a jerky, they're buying it because it's a tasty, convenient, better for you snack. And so that's where, this year is really about pivoting that mindset of our team to really focus on that. And that's going to allow us to continue to grow to those numbers Pete's mentioned.
Yeah. Well, Pete, you mentioned earlier, Tim Ferriss podcast and some of the stuff you picked up from him. It reminded me of a question that I heard him use for his own evaluation that I want to ask both of you. I love this question. We've done it for our own business at times because it kind of touches the intuition part of you. But the question is, let's fast forward X amount of years. Whenever you've set that goal, let's say you want to hit that $1 billion or whatever you mentioned in 3 years or 5 years. Imagine it worked and we're celebrating. You're back on the podcast. Can't believe you guys actually did it. You expanded, you hit the goal. What's the one thing that went right that made that happen? And then he does the opposite. Let's imagine it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you missed the goal. What do you think happened? Right. And it kind of touches your intuition of like, hey, if this is going to work, it's likely going to be because of this. If it's not going to work, we made this mistake, So I'd like to hear from both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Pete, and then Rashid, you can think about it for a second. But what comes to mind, Pete?
I'm going to answer both with the exact same answer. So it's either going to be right or wrong. And if you get this thing right, you can do either one. And it's bringing the right people onto the team. And that's it. I mean, that's literally everything. And it's like, if you get that wrong, which is part of why we're so excited to be partnered with Stride, because again, they've built teams. And we've got like 35 people on the team right now. We're still very small, relatively very small. But we'll be doubling by the end of next year. And then, that's a lot of people to add for us. I mean, it's doubling. And, so it took us 10 years to get to this size that we are right now. Anyway, that being said, I feel like, bringing in the right people, but then I think I guess it goes a little step further. It's maintaining that strong culture. Because when you're scaling a team that quickly, that's one of the first things to go if you do it wrong. But I think if you hire right and you bring in the right people, they are going to be a cultural fit, and that will just make that culture stronger, right? And so that's kind of part of the hiring process, should be making sure that these people are a cultural fit.
Love that. Rashid, how about for you?
Yeah, honestly, I think Pete nailed it. It's scaling the team, because I think, Pete and I realized very quickly that, we're not going to be able to scale the business unless we create kind of depth, right, in the team. He and I can only do so much. And we also knew that there's a number of gaps in our expertise. Like, we can't be experts on everything, but for us to kind of build what we're trying to build, we need to have that expertise. And so it's like, it's bringing in the right people. It's maintaining culture, but there's also a degree of timing. Because I think right now, Pete mentioned our team, like, we are significantly understaffed, and it puts a burden on the team. Then you start talking about this new environment when everyone's remote. Okay, well, how do you create culture in a remote environment? And there's like all these other things and compounding challenges that we're facing. So it's like, it's scaling it, but scaling it at the right time, and also trying to kind of, we continue to face challenges now that we never thought about before, right? We have folks that are, taking leave, and then we're like, well, oh shoot, we're so lean, we didn't have a backup for that individual. What do we do? And we start thinking about, well, we always use a third party for this. At what point do you internalize that, right? Where it makes more sense to have a full-time employee versus having a third party. So there's all these other challenges, but I think we've at least proven that the brand has something, right? We have a great product, it's selling, but now it's really around the team and the scalability to be able to get it to the next level.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of think forward and think about gaps and where's there any potential weakness, because if food product's a food product, right? It's a copycat category where if somebody sees something good, like, there's going to be other pop-ups. So you need to make sure that you continue to differentiate yourself from the competitors.
Yeah. So it sounds like, in your experience, and I've heard this from many others as well, the early success of the business was somewhat external, right? The right product market fit, brand strategy, marketing, that kind of thing. But you're saying at this stage of the company, the success is more internal. Did we build the right infrastructure, have the right butts and seats, the right culture? Is that kind of true?
For sure. Yeah. I think like proof of concept, we've proven that the Chomps product works if it's in front of the right consumer. And now it's like, do we have the team to get it in front of as many of those consumers as possible and also maintain quality? Because that's the other thing with scale, right? The product can change over time as you really start scaling. So it takes an amazing team to be able to do that.
Well, it's already amazing that you all are able to do the scale of business that you're at with 35 employees. I mean, that's quite a feat. They must already have some badasses on your team.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive squad.
Well, sometimes I like to check trends because I'm learning. I've done 300 of these interviews with founders like you. And so I like to just hear like what's similar, what's different. What I've often heard is that early, like 30 employees and under, the value is on like generalists, people that have no problem wearing multiple hats, that no one's saying that's not my job, but then later you really start to need specialists where you're like, actually it's a waste of money or time if you're not only doing that thing and bringing a great amount of expertise to that area. Are you all seeing it right there at 35? Are you all starting to see that play out as well? Like we need some specialists alongside the generalist type thing?
Yeah, we're actually like right at that tipping point.
That is very
You're
similar.
right at that tipping point?
I would say the one constant is going to be cultural fit, though. So whether it's one person that you have or you've got 35 or 3,500, cultural fit is key, because if without that, like you're just not going to be able to accomplish anything. So yeah, but I think in that point of like the generalist early on, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, you're just scrappy in the early days. You're like you said, you might need someone that day to fulfill an order when typically they're checking on the website or something like that. And you get the slow.
Look, we're always going to want people that are scrappy, even the specialists. So that's part of
that's a core value type thing.
That is one of we call it the traits of a champion. Like it's core because we feel like we don't want somebody to say, well, that's just not how it's done. Like that's the worst thing you could say to P and I. Like it can't be done, or it's just not the way it is. Like we got to where we are today because we challenged status quo and we had no clue what we were doing. So we just did what we thought made sense. So like the scrappiness needs to kind of reign true as well as that kind of game changer mentality.
Yeah.
But we want folks that are, specialists and being able to really take a situation and really understand it. Because at the end of the day, the generals are just kind of at the end of the day, you're being reactive, right? Versus proactive. And I think that's the mindset and that tipping point we're at now is we're starting to really create depth in the team and bring in some folks that can really round out kind of a broader skill set that we have now.
Yeah. Well, and the generals, like you said, you don't want to ever weed out the trait, right? And the trait or the value is scrappiness, but you will see that there's people that like intentionally are good generalists. They know enough about a lot to be able to be helpful in the conversation, but then you need someone who's only done one thing. That's a specialist, that they're like, I really know brand marketing, or I really know accounting or whatever. And you want them to be like world-class at it. But you're saying, and this is where I want to do this question. This is another fun question I've never done before. All right. This is gonna be fun. All right, Pete, I'm going to do it first with you, Pete, and then I'm going to come to you, Rashid. Pete, if I work for you, right? Let's imagine right after this podcast, you snatch me away from my career and I work for you. What's the one thing I could do that would get me fired? No brainer. And then the opposite. What's the one thing I could do that would get me promoted or higher valued in the company for you personally?
Oh my God. I have the answer for this. So it's, okay. It always goes twofold. So it's taking credit for something that you didn't do, or pushing blame away for something that you screwed up. Right? Like that to me is the worst thing. Like that, if you talk about what's not a cultural fit, you will get fired. And I have fired people from we haven't had a lot of people to fire, but that is one thing that gets under my skin and I can't forgive it, man. That's just like, it's one of those things that I'm like, you are not a fit for this culture. You're out. And that's it. So like you need to own your work, and good or bad. That's it.
Yeah. I love it because I should have qualified like the obvious fireable offenses is not what I'm talking about, right? Like sexual misconduct or racism. Like I'm talking about like what's almost, like you said, unique to your culture, where you're like, no, man, I need people that like to give away the praise, the team player, and like to take responsibility, and not the opposite is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
That's it. That's it.
What about for you, Rashid? If I worked for you, what would piss you off the most, and what would get me in your good graces?
Yeah, I think to be successful kind of in our environment, you need to be a self-starter, right? It's someone where you can give general direction and they can just figure it out. And so I think in the startup environment, yes, we're at some degree of scale, but at the end of the day, we still are a startup, and we need folks that kind of carry that mentality where they can really run with it. So I think in my mind, the folks on our team that are just complete badasses are individuals where Pete and I can give a general idea of what we're looking for. Their managers can do it. And the individual can just connect the dots and run it forward, ask questions when they need to, but come back to us with something that typically, is beyond what we thought we would get. Right. Those are the folks that are going to be successful. And the key thing is they're coming back and asking the right questions, because some folks will either they won't do shit because they won't understand the directions, and they're like, well, I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
They didn't follow up and they didn't make any progress. Like that's the best way to get under my skin. They come up with excuses as to why they couldn't get it done. Right. Oh, because of this or because of that. But it's like, if you took on a task, you need to make sure that you're able to execute on it. And I think it's just being able to work in ambiguity is critical in this environment, because most of the time we have an idea, we don't really we can't really conceptualize it, and we need their help doing that. So I think at this point in time, when you ask the question, that's kind of top of mind on what kind of would kind of get under my skin, versus like there's some people on our team that can just really run with stuff and figure it out, and it's pretty impressive to see.
Yeah, you both hit on two kind of critical things, and we see it with Pete for years. We see it with like the Jocko Willenick type attitude that he's popularized with the ownership of your own self, and with you as well, Rashid, like the figure it out attitude. Like the just figure it out. Come on, like don't make me. You could have Google searched that. You could have gone 2 or 3 more steps and probably figured it out before throwing your hands up. Those are just critical to the speed of a company and the health of a company, right?
But even like in your like everyday life, like there's at the end of the day, like it's just to me, it's just like a normal skill that people need to have.
Yeah.
Where if they need to get something done, they just need to figure it out. Like Google's a powerful tool.
You have kids. I have kids. I've told people before, like I have enough kids, actual kids, to not feel like you all are kids as well. I've got enough people asking me to do stuff for them that they could do for themselves, that I need you to be the adult on my team, right?
Exactly.
Oh man. Okay. Last question. I know we're coming up on time here. I really appreciate you all being here, but just on a personal level, and I'm liking the fact that I get 2 founders, 2 different personalities here. You can really take this question wherever you want, but Rashid, I'll start with you. What most juices you about staying engaged, right? Like staying passionate, staying locked in. What most helps you do that based on your personality or your value set or whatever?
It's interesting, but I like stress. Like I need that pressure. I think that's when I do my best work. And when things fall in kind of that steady state, I get bored and I kind of start procrastinating. So like, I think it kind of comes from my days in consulting. You're effectively a firefighter. When things are wrong, you're there, you're engaged, and then you roll off. So like, fortunately, every day at Chomps, we call it a roller coaster. There's a lot of stuff that we need to focus on, and the stress is always there. But I thrive in that environment where it's like where the pressure is there, and that's why I like it. I love to compete. I love to win, and every day is a new challenge.
Yeah. So the worst thing for you would just be there would be a steady state, and all you do is show up and babysit all the things that are happening.
Yeah, that's not going to keep my attention.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
When I used to go into like those client sites, I would see those offices and the cubicles, and I'm like 9 to 5, they do the same thing. I'm like, I would just get like anxiety. Like I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very similar. How about for you, Pete? What keeps you engaged?
It's brainstorming. So I'm an ideas guy, and I just love talking about ideas, and especially if you get somebody that's like engaged and they've got good ideas and we're kind of bouncing our ideas back and forth. Like that's what Rashid and I, our partnership has been like a million phone calls about like ideas. Like that's how it always works. And it's interesting because I feel like he and I brainstorm best with him, right, than anybody else on the team, I think, so far. Like, we have this dynamic where I'm able to call him and I give him this idea, and it might be a terrible idea, but it might be directionally something that gives him this idea where it's like, well, that doesn't work, but we could do this, right? And then it just snowballs into something else. And that's been our partnership literally from day one, where I'm just coming up with millions of different ideas, and he'll at least listen to it. And which I think is great, because I feel like we're trying to build a culture of, innovation. I'm not just talking about like products, right? It's like, let's think about the next way to market this product. Let's talk about the next way to sell it. How do you merchandise it? How are you going to do this? And so, that's where we're always trying to drive things forward. That gets me, oh man, I get fired up, man. If you get somebody on the team that comes in and they're like an ideas person, I love talking to those people. On the flip side, when you're trying to put ideas out there and you just get eye rolls like, oh, that would never work, or that type of thing, and you're like, I don't think you get what I'm trying to do here. Like, I'm trying to start talking, brainstorming. That
yes.
I don't work well with those people where they're just kind of like, they default to no, that doesn't work. Or I get I get exhausted trying to talk to them, but I'm probably exhausting them with all of my stupid ideas that they're hearing. So it's just not a great working relationship with those types of people.
I love it. Man, you just echoed the greatest excitement and fear of every visionary kind of creative person out there. Is they love the sacred space of brainstorming, but it also is terrifying or just demoralizing when someone like pisses on your fire or just pops every balloon, as you're putting it up there. Well said. All right, guys, again, thank you for your time. I know we've had you for a while now, but I am so excited to have met you and to hear your story, and I cannot wait to see you all continue to succeed, which is no doubt continue to succeed in the future. And I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It was awesome.
Awesome.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.